Toby asks, what are your thoughts on Andy Muschietti's comments on the questionable CGI in The Flash? So they first did screenings of The Flash about 6 weeks back in CinemaCon. It got a lot of high praise, but very early on, people started saying, CGI doesn't look complete here. Something like this looks pretty bad, but supposedly it's not the finished version of the film. And then they started doing fan screenings, same buzz, and this sort of, it's not the completed version of the film. And then they started showing the completed version of the film, and people are still like, this CGI looks bad. I cannot believe that we're seeing this. So during the press tour over the last few days, the director, Andy Muschietti, made some comments about the questionable CGI. And this is what he said. The idea, of course, is we are in the perspective of the Flash. Everything is distorted in terms of lights and textures. We enter this water world, which is basically being in Barry's point of view. It was part of the design, so if it looks a little weird to you, that was intended. Okay, so I read that, and I think that what he's saying is partially fair and true. There's a truth to what he's saying, that when you're in some of these perspectives in this film, it's not meant to be photorealistic. It's not supposed to look as realistic as is possible. That's fair. That's true of the movie that we're watching. At the same time, no, man, no, that absolutely does not cut it whatsoever. So the main thing that he's referring to there is there's these sequences in the movie where Barry goes into the Speed Force and you're able to like see time in front of you, the passage of time, different events, different variations sometimes. And on the one hand, this is captured really well in the sense that you go into it and as an audience member, they're able to very clearly visualize how Barry sees time going backwards or going sideways with variations. And so they visualize it in a way that without needing to explain what we're looking at, the audience gets it. So that's a big win, that they found a way to visualize this, that the audience immediately understands what they're seeing. But in the actual execution of the images we're seeing, it looks bad. Everybody thinks it looks bad. And the director goes, hey, I mean, it's meant to look a little bit weird with the textures and the lighting because it's his perspective. It's not reality. Sure, gotcha. But it's not supposed to look like a PlayStation 2 cutscene. It's like, that's not a good enough excuse. It shouldn't look like it's incomplete CGI that wasn't fully rendered. It should look like something interesting. So like in my mind, you have to find a way to visualize it that captures what we're seeing. The basic idea of the Coliseum, I think that worked. The images, they didn't have the right concept. They didn't want to go photorealistic, and instead they went for this halvesy, like kind of rendered people. So you imagine if they tried to like capture the way that memories play in our head, where like there's like a focal point that's really in focus, but then it's kind of hazy. So maybe you have a person that's really sharp at the center, and as it kind of gradiates out, it fades or it turns into like a fog, a haze, a cloud, something like that. My buddy Film Speak Griffin, he said like maybe go all out with stylization. And so then you're seeing statues of the past. You're seeing paintings or whatever of the past, like something that visualizes, that stylizes it. That's not a half measure between reality and stylization. If you have a person that it looks like the scene, it looks like the CGI 3D render of them, but not quite, it looks bad. And if my point of reference as an audience member is PlayStation cutscene, yikes, that's not good. But it's not even just the Speed Force stuff. When they render some of the stuff in the cameo section, if you haven't seen the movie yet, they render people in some cameos and stuff they do. It looks like that these actors in a 2009 video game. It doesn't look like 21st century top level CGI. It does not look like $200 million CGI. And likewise, I think the other issue here is like even the Speed Force, or I'm reading running, doesn't look good. There's this first shot in the movie where he like goes into a pose, he's about to start running, and it does this angle where you can see like in the perspective stretch to show kind of time slowing down, him running to run, and it looks awesome. It's a really cool shot. And then he starts running, and it just looks like he's kind of gliding on top of the ground. The movement of his legs doesn't match the speed at which he's flying down the road. It doesn't feel like his foot is digging into the ground and pushing him forward with traction and friction. Just feels like a guy gliding really fast on top of the ground. And maybe that's their idea, that it's the speed force. It's not actually foot pushing him. Okay, maybe that's the case. Fair enough. But it doesn't look believable. It looks like a person floating on top of the ground. When you go into the Speed Force and you see all of these tremendous images of time in front of you, it doesn't look believable. It looks like incomplete CGI. And I think that's the issue here. They didn't have the right idea on how to visualize it. In which case, you can throw all the money you want at it, over $200 million. You can throw time at it. This movie shot well over a year ago. They were test screening it over a year ago. So they've had time and money to get it right. But if you don't have an idea of how you want to visualize it, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how much time you have. If you have a bad concept, it looks bad. And when your movie looks cheap and you just go, well, it was meant to look weird. It's meant to look weird. It's meant to look not realistic, as in our reality. It's not meant to look unbelievable. And it's certainly not meant to look cheap. So I think these comments are questionable at best. But I mean, even in the third act, just there's these shots that are cartoony. It never really looks super believable. It looks like a cartoon with kind of realistic stuff to it. That's bad. That is not ideal. That is not what you want for a movie that cost this much money and took this long to make. And so I like the movie more than a lot of people, but these are not good excuses. These are not good explanations. He failed to have a proper vision for the speed effect, for the Speed Force. And some of it's just weird. Like, those cameos should look a lot better. Hey, if you like these types of videos, I have a second channel called Sean Chandler Plus, where I clip out segments from the different live streams that I do, talk about more niche things, talk about more movie news, little editorials, this type of stuff. You can check it out over on Sean Chandler Plus. I post almost daily over there. Little nuggets, a little bit more off the cuff, a different type of content, but still talking about movies and TV way too much.